taking an unconventional look at stocks, property, bonds, economics, and more. This is the Total Money Management Podcast with Steve Moriarty, Tom Hill, and Jacob Senior.
Welcome to Total Money Management Podcast, or welcome back, however you want to introduce it these days. But we're back. We're back. We're reviewing the week that was June 17th to 21st. We're toward the end of the financial year, and this will actually be released in the new financial year. So
it will be. It will be.
As usual, I'm back with Mr. Thomas Hill and Mr. Lord Stephen Moriarty.
Lord of the Manor.
How are we going, gents? Had a good
Terrible
week.
coffee. But beautiful weather.
It is bad coffee. We're not going to leave a bad review, though.
Terrible.
No.
They should give you a tester, a little sip.
Good barista, though, hey?
The barista was...
annoying.
A bit of a dick,
Yeah.
actually. But it's by the by.
Righto. Nothing
What's
to do
new?
with stocks. What's happening? Gentlemen, what's going on?
Averages be damned. So in the last week we've actually posted a 2-minute video on Alan Kohler. That's how you say it, right? Kohler.
Yeah.
Not cola as in Coca-Cola. But he goes through the numbers trying to get into, like, if you're trying to get into or staying in the property market. So it doesn't take an expert to say property is overvalued. We've been talking about it for a long, long time now. And I've actually got a bit of a property story to tell later on in the podcast about my house that's just sold, or the house that I'm living in that's just sold for a loss. So I'm really quite happy about it.
But it's pretty rare, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's pretty rare. Well, that's not right. Some people, I think, no one ever tells you about their losing stock, do they? No one ever says, oh, man, I just sold that stock and lost 40%.
Apart from me, where I come on the podcast every week and tell you I lost on penny stocks.
But you know what I mean?
Every stock?
You only ever hear you mainly ever only hear the winning stories, not the losing stories.
Yeah.
Or if you do, they're not, for every one loser, there's like 10 winners.
Yeah.
Right, and you sort of think, oh, well, that must have been just whatever was going on in their life, or, must have been a dud property, rather than thinking, well, it might be the start of something broader.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm curious I'm actually going to have a chat to the landlord. He's over from the US next week, I think. I want to figure out the existing landlord that's just sold. So maybe he sold it to cut his losses or something.
Yeah, it might be.
But anyway, look, around 30% of Australians currently own their own home, which is obviously predominantly older folks. But like some of these haven't taken loans out. We think we talked about in the last couple of weeks, 20-odd% or 25% are paying cash for houses now. It's next level parabolic at the minute in certain states.
Lots of stressed renters and mortgage holders, right?
It's funny because if you have, well, it's not really funny, but if you look at it, there's not that many people that, well, I shouldn't say that. There's more and more people becoming dissatisfied with the property market. Renters are not happy. Mortgage owners are not happy because rates have gone up. We're talking about June 17 to 21, but the rate decision was made
this
week, which we're recording, and it now looks like the inflation decision was made this week, and you look at it, and it now looks like rates are going to rise further. So you can imagine a lot of people with a mortgage are going, oh no, don't tell me we're up for another $200 a week.
Is that in August or September?
That's in July.
In July, you're right.
Yeah, the July. The expectation is they'll raise in July or August. But my point being, you're going to get $80 in tax cuts, and then the bank's going to take the $80
and the rest
for the loan repayment. So in other words, there's no respite. And the only ones that are really happy, I assume, are people who own property and have a low loan-to-valuation ratio or something, right?
Yeah.
Where it's not putting pressure on your income flow. But that's why I say overall, if you look at it overall, it's got to stop somewhere, and that's when the trouble begins.
Would I be right or wrong in saying that it's probably really only people who have bought post-COVID that are going to be feeling these a lot?
Well,
because most people who bought before that, right, like the valuations have gone absolutely nuts.
Yeah, but it depends, Tom, because like the post-COVID people, the prices are up like 40 to 60%.
That's what I'm saying. But if they took the loan out before that, so let's say they took a $500,000 mortgage out, the place is now worth $900,000.
On a fixed at 2% or something.
Well, not even just that, but like they're not borrowing what the house would sell for right now, or even close to it.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of people that probably won't feel it as much as those.
No, because there's a difference between saying my property is worth $1 million, I borrowed, 500, but you can't get that $1 million.
Yeah,
You imagine, Tom, if I said to you, Tom, great news, mate, your property is worth $2 million. You went, that's fantastic, Steve. I only owe, 800 on it. But out of your income, your percentage to pay back that money is more and more, right? You see what I mean? Like your property's worth more, but the problem is you can't go, oh, well, I'll just sell a few. If you got $2 million worth of stocks and you've got a margin loan of 800,000, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to sell 100,000 of the stocks and I'll pay down the margin loan. The problem with a property is you can't do that, right? You can't say, oh, Steve, I bought it for 1.5, it's worth 2. Listen, I'm going to actually sell 250,000 and pay down my loan. You can't do that. And the argument is, oh, yeah, but you can borrow against it. Well, you can, but the problem is you're actually just borrowing more money. Right? And this is what people do. People's house prices go up. It's really well documented, the wealth effect, right? Which is people no longer save money. What do I need to save money for? My property's going up and, that's my ATM, right? And that's why we're having stuff with booming car sales and, overseas holidays, because everybody's cashing in on the house. Oh, it's worth $1 million and we only owe 600. Let's borrow 25 and, head off to Europe for 3 months.
Yeah. In terms of mortgage repayments, you might have the property might be worth an extra $200,000 or $300,000, but that's not an extra $200 a week in the bank account.
Yes.
So
it's not cash flow.
Yeah. If interest rates are hiking, particularly if you're on variable, like those people before COVID that were on 1%, 2%, 3%, probably laughing still. But if they're on 6 or 7%,
that would have all come off now.
Yeah. But you think, guys, what you can borrow at 2 is, I don't know, I'm not going to do the figures, but you can borrow, let's say you borrowed $1 million at 2.
Yeah.
Right? Because you looked at it and said, man, that's $1,000 a week. We can pay that. Now, your property goes from 1.2 million if you put 200,000 in, it goes to say 1.6, right? Even 1.8. And you go, this is fantastic. We borrowed $1 million, it's worth 1.8. And we owe $1 million on it, but that was at 2%. And if that was costing you, say, two grand a week, then it goes to 6%. Your property's worth 1.8, but you're paying now $4 grand a week. That's what I'm talking about. You see what I mean? That's what the answer to your question, Tom, is. Yeah, their net wealth is probably better off if they sell the property, right? But at 2%, no one said, you know what? I'm not going to borrow $1 million. Let's borrow 600 and be sensible because rates might go up, right? And again, because Philip Lowe said back then, rates won't be going up until 2024. Yeah. And even then it was like, yeah, and then they'll probably go up, 1%.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what encouraged people to borrow bucket loads of money because the rates were at 2%. Property was booming anyway, so it was for most people it was basically a bloody no-brainer because no one said, well, what happens if rates go to 5? Nah, that won't happen. Phil Lowe reckons they won't be rising till, another 4 years. And that's been the problem, right? Yeah. Because even though you've got your property's gone from 1 to 1.5, the cash flow that you were using to pay down the debt has gone from, $1,500 a week to $3,000 a week, right? So you can't take any of that excess value out to, substitute your lifestyle or anything like that. Yeah, and then on top of that, there's a lot of people who then did the wealth effect and said, the property's worth 1.4. Oh, well, let's toddle off to Europe for 25 grand or let's buy a new SUV or, You see what I mean? Like, if you look, and this is why I keep harping on about debt levels, because the debt has got to be repaid from the income. And at some point, like in the GFC with America, there was no one left that wanted to borrow, right? And that's why that's why the banks went and gave money to anyone who had a heartbeat, because what they understood was, if we stop lending, the whole joint comes down. Right? And this is what I'm trying to explain to people about property. I'm not saying it's a bad investment. I've got no idea what the personal circumstances are. But what I'm saying is you've got to realise that at some point there's nobody left to buy.
Particularly when you got Commonwealth's book that's 60% residential loans.
Absolutely.
Like, that's a big red flag.
High. Yeah.
They're way out over their skis in my book. And, like on Monday, Sydney's like 9.5 times to income. Well, I've seen figures like 13. It depends. But
I was talking to a property guy at work the other day who's just sold a house that was 11 times income.
Yeah.
And he's like, mate, like
the average is 4.
Yeah, 4.
So you're talking about 3
yeah.
times, right? You're talking about 3 times what it normally is. So again, I like to use the standard, like men's height. So the average male's 5'10". This is like having someone 6'10", right? And you go, oh yeah, that's normal. It's
the
like
next 100 dudes will be 6'10" or above.
Yeah, and it's like, no, that's not the way it's going to work. So that's why I think it just seems to be getting worse. And on the flip side of that, the 3 levels of government are now all smashing property owners, right? Brisbane City Council said, we're going to hit Airbnb people.
Yeah.
Victoria is a shite show because they're banging people up for rates and all sorts of stuff. And then you've got rate rises coming in July. So...
Well, renters got a bit of reprieve over the last few weeks, so you can only increase rent once every 12 months now.
Yeah, and didn't they kind of take out the ability to go in and offer 12 months in advance as well? Because I know there's a lot of that.
I think
like
that
people and apparently you can't over-offer.
You're not allowed to.
Oh yeah, you're not allowed
well.
to. Yeah, you can't. If the property's advertised for 600, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's legal for you to go in and go, hey dude, I'll give you 620.
Yeah.
Right. You can't have a bidding war, so to speak, on rent.
But there was absolutely a lot of that going on.
Or it might be that they can't
Hell
ask
yeah.
for that anymore, but they can take, if somebody is willing, they can take it. I'm not sure what the actual law is. But anyway, as a renter, I think it's about damn time that we had a bit of reprieve.
Well, it's just the cycle and the way it works. But it is really, really serious, because if you look at the economy is like teetering along near a recession.
It's crazy. It's kind of like one of the first things you taught us about market cycles, right? And bubbles. And, you really landed the point that when you're in a bubble, it doesn't feel like there's any reason that this will stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're living it right now.
Cocaine brain.
While we're looking at this going, I just don't see how property's going to fall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially based on the narrative of the Olympics and, all those stories. Like, you can understand market cycles, and I get all this, and I know it doesn't make sense for it to keep going up, but it's hard to see that it won't.
That was, you're right, and I'm not criticising you, but that's exactly, I see it in socials. Everybody is basically saying, oh, well, it's all over, for renters or something like that. And I can assure you, look, it might get even worse, but I'm telling you, it stops, right? And it's the same with the US stock market, right? The Cape this week, I think, is about 35.5 or something.
Yeah,
right?
I think it is.
You just look at it and go, oh man, this thing is unrelenting, and then it stops. But the thing is, because we don't know what the event is, we assume there's not going to be an event, right? You just sort of go, oh, well, it's just going to go on forever. And it's like, well, no, it can't go on forever.
But it always goes on longer than you think it should, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Exactly. Right? It goes on for twice as long as you think it will, but then it's twice as bad when it starts falling, right? That's why I say, you get stock bull markets of like 400%, but then you lose 50%. So when you look at it, you go, oh, in actual fact, it was only 200%, right? That's what people don't realise. Like 82 to 2000 was 16% compound per year, right? Which is doubling your money every 5 years. But from 2000 to 2010, you lost basically 50%. So from that point of view, the 16% turned into 8%. Right? That's why we always talk about market cycles, because it's no good saying the current situation is going to go on forever, because quite clearly it doesn't, and quite clearly it can't. Right?
It doesn't make sense that this could keep going on forever.
Yeah,
right?
it just feels like it, because if I said to you, Tom, it's going to be over in 6 months and there's going to be a hurricane and, blah, 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 this will be finished. You go, oh, my God, right, thank God we're going to get some relief. But because you can't see the relief or the event, you assume that it's going to continue on. And it, as I said, it may well do, but it'll finish at some point, and I suspect it's going to be a long, slow decline, right? But it depends on what the government's response is. If they just say, listen, we're just going to let this thing decline, well, whether you lose 50% in 3 years or 10 years, take your pick, you're still losing 50%.
It's human nature to want to know exactly what's going to happen and when, and if somebody can't explain that, then it's just put to one side as
it's just recency bias.
Exactly. But I mean, things like Nvidia, that looks exactly like the 2000 bubble.
Yeah.
And you're just like, come on, like people are trying to have a conversation with someone on any social media platform that Nvidia is overpriced, and that it probably can't be this parabolic forever, is literally like one of the hardest things to do.
But
just don't.
But I like it.
Well,
I like arguing.
You should do what Canoe Reeves does. Do you know what he does? He says
Canoe.
Who's the
Keanu?
Keanu Reeves.
Who's Canoe Reeves?
Keanu Reeves. He says 1 + 1.
Superman.
Canoe.
Who was? No, that was Christopher Reeves. This is his son, you idiot. You know what he says? He said, I'm at that stage in life where if you say 1 + 1 = 5, good for you, see you later. Yeah. Right? And it is like that. I'm like that with you guys in Bitcoin. Right?
Yeah.
If you can talk to me all you like about Bitcoin, I reckon it's bullshit, but that's me, right? But I'm also at the stage where I think, okay, if you want to say Nvidia's worth 842 million, good for you. Okay, bye. And that's the way it is.
Until the red wine comes out, and then then
I'll argue.
Yeah.
But this week, I can tell you, this week I went back and had a look. There was a guy called Scott McNeely, right? He was the CEO of Sun Microsystems in the internet bubble. Now, and it's sort of, semi-famous if you follow stocks and all that sort of boring stuff. And he said, he had an essay, I think it was, and it was called What Were You Thinking? Right? And it was, the company had gone from, I don't know the story fully, but let's say it had gone from $10 to $100, right, to $200 and then back to, $6 or something, right? And he said, what were you thinking? And the price to sales ratio at that stage was 10, right, 10 to 1. Now, what he said was, if you calculate it, that means I have to give you 100% of revenue, right, for the next 100 years for that valuation to be what it is, right? Go and have a look at what price to sales Nvidia is. It's about 39.
Jesus.
Right? So this is the benefit of understanding market history, because I can go, hang on a second. I was in the internet bubble. I remember that. There was that guy who did blah, 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 right? Whereas at your age...
Pet stock or something that was worth nothing.
Yeah. Petstock.com and all that stuff. So that's why I'm saying, your point, Tom, about market cycles and market history. If you've lived through that, you get to be able to say, hang on a second, I've seen this before. Or at the very least be able to say, I've seen the way that the irrational exuberance is in property at the moment. I mean, I saw an article. I know this is a bit old in terms of our recording, but when Julian Assange arrived back, there was an article yesterday about here's 4 properties Julian Assange could buy.
What?
I mean, but that's what I mean. You get to the point where it's like, is there any conversation this country has that is not about property prices? And
That just seems illogical. The guy's been in jail for the last however many years.
yeah, I know, but that's the national conversation, that everything is revolving around property prices. You know, inflation, oh my God, interest rates, oh, you know, it's crushing mortgage holders. Oh, you know, celebrity, you know, B-grade celebrity sells something at Byron Bay, or cricketer cashes in on, you know, savvy property move. I think I saw one the other day with Dusty Martin. You know, Dusty is an AFL player. Oh, you know, he's built a commercial real estate empire or something. Everything is about real estate. And I can tell you, when that happens, something goes miss, right? It really is. And this is why we teach groupthink, right? Because like you say, Tom, everybody's in the room, they're all getting drunk, and nobody can see a problem, right? And the problem is only outsiders can look in and go, do you think you guys should lay off the tequila a bit? And it's like, it's all good, mate. You know, it's all great, fantastic. And that's what goes on, right? That's why they say the Fed is there to take away the punch bowl, right? The punch bowl's full of booze and everybody's having a party time on it.
Yeah, and it's been
nuts.
going for 20, 25 years.
Look,
That'll be a big hangover.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a beauty when it comes.
Keep us moving, Tom.
Yeah.
Release us.
Tuesday. Look, we can probably
All right, I'll shut up then. All right, I'll go on.
stay on topic, mate. All right. Look, Tuesday. Just a brief one here. Look, rate cuts
I'm on
obviously
Thursday.
being pushed.
We're going back.
Mate,
Mate, I've just
kidding me?
it's taken me 21 minutes to cover Monday.
I know. Don't get him started. This is a 2-hour special. Yeah, Tuesday. Really, just the conversation around. Obviously, rate cuts are on hold again.
Now, on that, Tom,
Not again,
Please.
Not again.
Someone gag him. No, he might like it.
must be the coffee.
Oh dear.
Righto.
Wednesday, more talk about globalization. So the future is going to be self-sufficiency, right? Which is what we've been talking about in the new normal.
Yep.
Bringing more things here,
Yeah,
reducing our reliance on everyone else.
Yep.
So this is about tariffs. So there's car wars, which is basically US, EU, Turkey, and other countries imposing tariffs and duties on Chinese EVs. So, which is going to cause a huge issue for China, who are making millions and tens of millions of EVs, and they can't now export them, and they can't also sell them in their own country. So I'm not sure
Fun times.
I'm not sure what the end game is going to be there, but
Well, it will be, and again, if you want to look at models, look at what happened to Japan in the 90s, because the Japanese did the same thing when the world decided to do free trade and globalization in the 80s. We spent the next 10 years shifting manufacturing out of Australia and America, right, and England, New Zealand, Canada. The countries that took it on was the Japanese and Korea, and they decided that they were going to export, right, create export markets. And so that's what they did. So we got all of our stuff from Japan. But it got to the point where the Americans said to the Japanese, you've got to stop that and you've got to start building factories in the US, right? So Honda was the first one that said, yep, righto, we'll build a car plant. That's the same thing now that's happened with China. But the difference is, and I stress this as an important point, the difference is China and America are not friends, right? The Japanese never threatened the Americans in terms of Japan saying, listen, we think it's our turn to run the world, right? Mm-hmm. The Japanese never did that. They were just more interested in making exports and, you know.
they just did Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. So the Chinese are basically have a different story. And the difficulty is when the Japanese were selling, you know, millions of Toyota Corollas, there wasn't computer systems in the cars where you could snap data.
Yeah.
And this is what I've been talking about. All of those chip things have information, which is what the Communist Party of China are after.
Well, the Americans are saying it's national security threat.
Well, and it is.
Well, no, that's what that's what their narrative is as to why they're not friends.
That's why I think even when what's happened now is the Chinese are moving into Mexico and going, okay, well, how do we get around the American subsidy, the American tariffs? Right, well, we'll set up in Mexico and export from Mexico, right? But they're going to have the same problem because the Americans are going to say, no, it's not about where you're located in Mexico. It's about you're owned by the Chinese and the Chinese government can access the information, right? Well, at some point, Mexico has to say, listen, you guys, we don't want your investment anymore because the Americans won't let us export it anyway. And we don't want, we don't want to be buying Chinese EVs. We want to be buying our own EVs, right? Or from South Korea or from Thailand.
What's this? And I'm going to take us off track now, so I apologise, Tom. What's this BRICS coin thing that's happened that people are talking about at the moment?
They're trying to.
There's something to do with the petrol, petroleum
Petrodollars.
Petrodollars.
Yeah. The US currency basically runs the world, right? And that because it's the safest currency, it's the most liquid. If I said to you, Jacob, you imagine you sell cars into the American market, right? Now, the theory is I would pay you in, let's say Chinese yuan, right?
Yeah.
If you're Chinese, right? And you say, hey, here's, 100 cars, pay me in American dollars. I then change them into Chinese yuan and I pay my local staff, right? What the exporters do is say, no, I don't want to raise my wages. So therefore, when you pay me in American dollars, I can only buy stuff that is in American dollars, right? So that means they have to buy American bonds, American assets, right? Buildings and all that sort of stuff. This is why you get asset bubbles, right? And the asset bubbles are in the 5 countries, right, what they call the Anglophiles, right? The US, England, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We've all had housing bubbles because we allow the free flow of capital. You see, we don't say, oh, Jacob, you're Chinese. Nah, I'm sorry, mate, you're not buying a property here. But you go to Asia and try and walk in and go, hey, I'd like to buy some property. It ain't easy, right? And it's very frowned upon. So from that point of view, oil is also priced in US dollars. So there's a huge amount of US dollars out there, right? And that's what they're trying to break. They're trying to say, we'll create our own currency because what they believe is the American dollar has had what they call is the exorbitant privilege, which is your currency so strong, that makes everybody else's currency weak.
Yeah.
You get better buying power and stuff.
So BRICS are now creating their own
Well, they're trying to.
currency between them.
Yeah, but they will fail, and they'll
It
fail.
still needs to be converted into the national currency to make money anyway. It's like Bitcoin.
A little bit. The problem they've got is all of these countries want to run the show, but they don't want to be importers like the Americans, right? They want to run exports, but also tell everybody how to do it. Well, you can't do that, right? The Americans have basically said for the last 40 years, we'll run the global sea lanes and we'll protect everybody so everybody can trade, right? And you know how we used to run budget surpluses? Now we're running huge trade deficits. And that's why now, this is why I'm saying there's a new normal in town because the Americans have said, you know what, stuff this, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to look after our own. And that's where it's become a real problem because China says, well, hang on, we've built all these factories where we can produce 45 million electric vehicles. And it's like, okay, best of luck selling them somewhere. Because like we say on Wednesday, the EU's imposing tariffs on China, Turkey's imposing tariffs on China, Brazil's imposing tariffs on Chinese steel. So all of these countries are now saying, well, hang on, if the Americans are not taking the Chinese stuff, the Chinese are going to try and flood Europe's markets with it. Okay, well, the Europeans who are, 200 years of manufacturing, they're not going to go, yeah, great idea, let's just buy cheap EVs. I mean, no way. They've looked at the US and gone, you guys got hollowed out. You got terrible income inequality. You've had heaps of problems. No. We don't believe that. And so this is where you've got this serious tension going on, and it's going to go on for a long time. That's why I'm saying it's the new normal. If anybody thinks we're going back to all being friends and free trade, they're dreaming. They're absolutely dreaming.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of BRICS and emerging markets, Malaysia's just announced it's joining BRICS. Not sure what benefit that will give.
Oh, that's just anti-American.
Yeah. Yeah. But look, emerging markets, we've been talking about it for a while. There's still no love for them. They are cheap. And if history is any guide, and it usually is, there'll come a point where investors start to take notice of the cheap valuations within emerging markets. So something that we like to talk about is find a cheap sector, find a cheap company.
Cheap country.
Find a cheap country, then find a cheap company. If you're looking for anywhere to invest for the long term, that's usually a good 3-step process to find somewhere cheap if you're into your value. And that's what we've done recently. I mean, we went through, I think it was, last night or a couple of days ago in the coaching call, found a cheap sector, found a cheap country, and then found a cheap company within that country and spoke about that.
Sector too, yeah.
Yeah. And the whole...
What was it, 11% dividend or something?
I think it's about 8, but...
Yeah, it's a good one.
Better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, as my old man would say.
Big time.
Big time. Righto, what else have we got? Friday, frontier markets, yep. They're terrible too. Get in there, have a look. It's really, I will say to folks though, it's really hard to buy frontier markets. I think there's one ETF with frontier markets, and frontier markets generally are Eastern Europe. So think Hungary, those sort of Estonia, Latvia, those sort of places. Southeast Asia, some of the Bangladesh, and I think that's about some of the Middle Eastern ones.
So is that a buy signal?
Well, they're cheap, but they've been cheap for a while. But I tried to find a frontier markets ETF about, I think it might have been 3 years ago when they were cheap. And I think there's only one, but it was predominantly Russia.
Yeah,
so it was a bit like, okay.
Eastern Europe's a bit of a red flag at the moment.
Yeah. Look, it's one of those places where, you either make 400% or you lose all your money. It's like when you go there.
Sounds fun.
Well, I remember friends went there as tourists. They went skiing. They were really mad skiers. These are the people I talked about in Hokkaido a few weeks ago. Anyway, they went to Russia skiing, right? And they went helicopter skiing. Right, so you get a helicopter, they're good skiers, but
jump out of it,
yeah, and all this sort of stuff. But anyway, they, every part of the way they get stiffed, right? Because it's like, okay, you want to jump out of the helicopter alive, or do you want to jump out of the helicopter dead? It's an extra 300 rubles. It's like, okay, and it's just, that's what I mean.
Serious.
It's like, yeah, absolutely. They don't give a toss about you, mate. You're just some tourist. It's not as if you got to think. It's not as if they're going to go, oh my God, the police are going to rush in and investigate the death of a tourist. It's like, who cares? They're here to ski.
The bears will get you in this neck of the woods.
I mean, that's what I mean. Not everywhere's nice and pleasant like Australia, and it's really, really hostile because it's a pretty rough world up in there. There's a lot of poor people, and it's just really, really eye-opening. Now, that's why personally I always look at it and go, no way in hell am I going to any of those places, right? Just my knowledge of randomness is just like, sorry, it's off my radar.
Stay in the sanctity of Gordon Park.
Well, yeah, I'll just look at the pictures on YouTube or videos, but it's just, that's what I mean though. It's, that's why they call them frontier markets.
Well, quick one on that. Russia, are we ever going to be able to trade those stocks again?
Probably not. You
Never.
Well, it depends. I won't say never, but it's unlikely the longer it goes on. Because we have to see. You have to think through what a lot of people do in national security issues and in war is that. This is going to sound stupid, but war is the easy part. The hard part is after the war, right? Where the post planning. So with a place like Russia, you have to look at it and say, okay, when people are going, the Americans need to bomb the crap out of it. And it's like, okay, then what do you do? Right? Because that's what they had with Iraq. The Americans went into Iraq and then just found themselves in this, this quagmire for 10 to 15 years. And they had the same thing in Afghanistan, right? The Russians had the same problem in Afghanistan. So you can't just go in and bomb them back to the Stone Age and then go, there you go, we won the war, right? Because Russia's got 6,900 nuclear warheads. That might be a bit of a problem, right? So it's much more, and you have to look at it and say, well, where do you see Russia in 10 years? Well, you can't just let it go into... This is what happened again in 1990 when the communists, when the wall came down. There was a really great book called Turbo Capitalism, right, written by a really good geostrategist called Edward Luttwak. And he said that the essence of it was Russia became completely lawless after the wall fell down. Right, and who took over was the mafia, right? That's why Putin has spent time trying to get everything back from the oligarchs, because they were just mafia thugs. And how do you get control of an asset? Easy, you shoot everybody, right? And then you stand there and you say, "This is mine." Oh, no, it's not. Bang, right, still mine. That's the way it went on. Right, that's what I mean. That's why you look at it and go, you want to invest there, or, you could make a lot of money or you could lose your life.
Yeah, I don't think that'll work
So
here.
Petrobras are basically never going to turn back on again.
No.
Or
Petrobras is fine because they're in
Lukoil.
Brazil. Lukoil and, just recently, Gazprom has gone from being a huge profit maker into losing money.
Well, Gazprom is the one I think I'm talking
Gazprom,
about.
yeah.
Was that the one that you bought at a PE of 2 and it stayed there?
Yep. Well, it doubled to a PE of 4.
And then turned off.
And that was really good. Then it went back to a PE of 0. And now it's a good point, right? Because Gazprom this week, I think, came out and said, we're losing money. This was a thing that had more cash than you could poke a stick at. Now they're losing money because of the war, right? And slowly but surely, you've got to look past the war and say, okay, what does Russia do with all those nuclear warheads? Who runs the show? What do we do with all that agriculture, with all that oil, with all those resources? Because you see, there's a lot of countries who'd be saying, well, hey, hang on a second, we could get in there and snag some of that stuff, predominantly China, right? Because the Chinese are looking at it saying, well, we need agriculture and we need resources. Okay, Russia's got them. So they may play the long game to say, well, we'll support Putin until he weakens to the point where we can say, okay, we'll flip sides, Putin's defenceless, and we get in there and divide it up with the Americans. That's what the cold hard reality is of global politics, right? You get in there and you say, okay, who's going to run the oil? Well, after the wall came down, it was the mafia. And then once they got settled, it was Putin who came back in and said, right, now I'm going to clean the lot. That's why they're all being fallen out of windows or dying, right? Or being poisoned.
Wow.
Fun times.
We've done it again. We've stalled. The bonus. So in April, margin debt declined 1% and so did the stock market. So obviously quite correlated.
Yep.
May, margin debt rose 4.5%. So did the stock market. As we've highlighted previously, margin debt has a strong correlation with the stock market.
Yeah.
So something to keep an eye on.
Watch
There's a
margin
chart
debt
there.
gives you a good idea.
Yeah.
Now, just on that, dare I say, think about property lending, right? When mortgage lending goes up, what happens to house prices? They ain't going to go down, are they? Yeah. So that's what I'm saying to people. You watch those lending figures and they're starting to rise again, right? Because all these investors think because there's rental yields are, because the rent's going from $500 a week to $600 a week, they think it's a good idea to buy a property worth $1.5 million. Best of luck. The yield is still terrible, but they're just speculating on the idea that, oh, well, if the rent goes to $650, well, that means the property will be worth 1.8. And it's like, that ain't the way it works.
Yeah.
This is a cute little thing you butted in, Stephen. The short story.
Innovation, mate, innovation.
Oh, you're always thinking.
No, what I'm trying to do there is just give a series of headlines because what I'm trying to do, we always talk about the new normal, and what I'm trying to do is just reinforce that idea with evidence to say we're getting it right, if I can put it to you that way.
Yeah.
Right? that's what I'm trying to do there, is just to say, look, we said it's going to go from efficiency to redundancy, from big government, from small government to big government. Here's the evidence to support that.
It's transitioning.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's what I'm trying to sort of do there.
And then let's end on the chart of the week. So we've been bagging out China again, but they're cheap, right? They've got a PE of 10.2, which is one of the lowest it's been since 2008. And it just keeps grinding down. So it's probably a longer term investment if you're going to consider it, given everything that's going on. But
yeah,
well, yeah, the points that you've got here, right? 2008, it was over 40, the PE.
Yep.
And the US is over 35 now. We know that the average, or the median,
Yep.
the baseline should be around 15.
Yep.
So yeah, strong indication that China's a bargain.
Well, I'd rather buy China at 10 than buy the US at 35.
yeah, that's the key point, right? Like
It's the point. Look, I could be completely wrong, right? But
Could do a Gazprom. It could be a cake for one.
absolutely. And seriously, you're right there, right? China could say, righto, that's in the market economy, and
in
or like
2004,
Japan,
it was 5.
Well, like Japan, it could go nowhere for 30 years. But the odds of it rebounding and you making money are a lot better than buying the Cape at 35 going, yeah, I reckon it'll go to 40.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that's, is it probable? US is already at 35. And I've noticed what people are now saying is, oh, yeah, but it's not like 2000 where it was 44. And it's like, no, mate, but at 35, it's a decent, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not exactly going, oh, Steve, stop worrying, it's 15. It's like, okay, we already know that we're double the normal, but hey, no worries because it went to 44.
Yeah, it could go to 54, but it's still
absolutely.
expensive.
But the point being, what happened when it went to 44? Oh, you lost 50 to 60% of your money, and the Nasdaq went down 83. It's like, oh, okay, that's probably not a good outcome, is it?
Yeah. Well, it's about just diversifying, looking at your asset allocation in each.
Yep.
Someone that's solely invested in America at any time during, doesn't matter if the Cape's 1 or 500, it's a bad idea to have all your money in one spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway, let's wrap it up there, gents. If you're still on and it's been 42 minutes, well done. And as always, if you have any questions, we've having a few people actually comment with a couple of questions which we failed to answer today, but we will next time. Feel free to reach out. But until next time, have a good week. Cheers.
Adios.
Stay up to date on our socials. Just search for Total Money Management on Instagram and TikTok. For your free investor personality assessment, go to totalmoneymanagement.com.au. And as always, remember, we don't provide financial advice.